the country. It took Haiti 122 years to pay off its debt and required taking high-interest loans.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy to say that Haiti is poor and Haiti must be poor. And I think the better question whenever a people, an entire people is characterized as poor with this word, is to say, not why are they poor, but why aren't you?
But it's not just the French who have played a role in Haiti's misery.
So the United States has intervened in Haitian affairs quite a lot.
President Moïse's assassination in 2021 left some Haitian officials calling for U.S. intervention, but not everyone agrees.
The only way that that could ever even have a fruitful outcome would be if it was because they were in dialogue with the Haitian people for the first time, because that is not what usually happens. That's not what happens at all. They dialogue with the people claiming power, and some negotiation is struck between those vying for power and the United States government. There's a lot of people saying, no, we don't want the United States to come and intervene again, because this is, again, a repetition of history.
The history that Professor Doubt is talking about involves the United States' 19-year occupation of Haiti, an occupation that killed thousands of Haitians. Following the assassination of Haiti's president in 1915, U.S. President Woodrow Wilson's administration invaded Haiti to protect U.S. investments. Then, they forced the election of a new Haitian president who would protect American interests in the country. Racist and fear-mongering rhetoric was used to justify the move. The occupation ensured that the U.S. prioritized its own interests in Haiti over what was best for Haitians. The U.S. occupation ended in 1934 after local dissent and rebellion grew too costly for the U.S. to control. But even after the occupation, the United States continued to play a role in the internal affairs of Haiti. In 1957, the U.S. government threw its support behind a Haitian dictator, François Duvalier. Duvalier and his successor, aka his son Jean-Claude, ate up aid from the United States in exchange for their strong anti-communist stand at the height of the Cold War. Haitian uprisings ended Duvalier Jr.'s rule and led to Haiti choosing its democratically elected leader, Jean-Bertrand Aristide, in 1990. But within a year, Aristide's government was toppled by a coup. Not only was one of the leaders of the coup on the CIA's payroll, but the US had set up and funded the Haitian military and National Intelligence Service, which both played key roles in the coup. Ousted Aristide returned to his second presidency in 2001, and again was forced out of office by a coup that he claimed the US had orchestrated. And after that, President Obama's cabinet pressured a Haitian presidential candidate to withdraw in 2010.
We see reports coming out of various civil society organizations saying that Haitians have lost faith in the electoral process because it doesn't reflect their actual concerns.
And that brought us to the 2016 Haitian presidential election, where late President Moïse was elected with an extremely low voter turnout, but US backing. In February 2021, Moïse refused to step down at the end of his term. The US once again backed him while thousands of Haitian protesters took to the streets.
Many Haitians are saying, we want to try actual Haitian democracy, where the Haitian people, not just the elite and the bourgeoisie and the business interests, get to have a say and determine the direction and future of the country.
It's clear that Haiti's poverty and political instability has long been influenced and shaped by foreign players. So, knowing this, where does Haiti go from here?
We have never been able to see what could happen in this particular Black country without meddling and interference. We should try something new in the United States, and that is back off and back away and let the Haitian people determine their own future.
All right, so I hope that video was insightful, but I actually want to turn this over to our panelists to see if you had any reflections or thoughts on what you heard and saw from that video. And I'll start with Chef Solomon.
Yeah, I think it was a very insightful video. A lot of people to this day don't know. A lot of people know that Haiti is the first Black republic of the world, but also Haiti is the first Black republic that helped countries like Greece, Poland, Colombia, Venezuela, pretty much all the countries in South America gain their independence. But people don't know that in order to gain our independence, we had to give up our entire, basically everything, all the money that the country had, in order to gain our independence. And we had to pay for it until the 1900s. So people don't know that we had to start. We basically started in a negative, where other countries start prospering. We started in negative, so that really had an effect. And if you really think about it, Haiti has been independent since 1804, um, and that's about 200 some years removed. So if you remove this a country's financial means in the beginning, that's gonna you're not gonna see the effects right away. The effects are gonna start. You're gonna start seeing the effects around 150 years, 160 years, 200 years, and on top of that, you have foreign governments, Western governments that are meddling in everything that we do. So those are like dominoes that's been falling since the inception of our independence. And I think the only way for our country to prosper is for us to have, it has to be radical. It has to be somewhat like what's going on in Rwanda. And I think that's the only way that our country could move forward. And that means democracy in America. The democracy that's whatever it's called democracy in America might not be the same for Haitians. So that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll definitely have a follow-up question for that later. How about Dr. Ann? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. That video was very insightful and powerful. It really highlights how Haiti has kind of been under this sense of pseudo freedom since we've been free, where it's like you're free, but you're not really free because all these other countries are going to use you to further their interests and for their agenda. And when you go back and you think about how fruitful our land was and how, we were bringing in so much money for ourselves just on our land. And from everything that's happened to us, that land is now destroyed and we can't really produce and provide for ourselves as much as we used to. And I agree with Chef Solomon. It's like the idea, like he said, democracy, what we're familiar with in America may not be what is best for Haiti. And at the end of the video, I just like let Haitians determine their own future. And I think that's extremely important because we've been under the thumb of America and all these other great powers from the very beginning. And the morale of us outside of the country is down, but only imagine what the morale of people in the country, right? And where that's at, given everything that they're going through.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Claudette, anything you want to add?
The video kind of summed up everything that educates those who are watching our like a bit of our story, a snippet to get the idea of where we came from and how we are now. But what stood out to me is that the end, what Anne said, as she said that, let Haitians pretty much do what they need to do and take over. But it's one of those things where it could be conflicting because it's just, it's hard for us as a people to work collectively. It's all about having the proper leadership to get us there. We have so much potential. We could go so far. We should have been further, but there's been that thumb on top of us as well. But it's gonna take us a while. It's gonna take us a while. So much I would say. I'm pretty sure there's more, and we're gonna discuss here. But
yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. So before we move on to my next question that I had for the panelists, I want to follow up on something you had mentioned, Chef Sebastian. You talked about radical change that needs to take place and the radical change we're seeing in, I think it was Rwanda that you mentioned. Could you say more on that?
Yeah, I think pretty much the same fate that Haiti is kind of has been going through was the same thing in Rwanda, and they had a civil war, and that was caused by outside outside forces that pinned two groups of people against each other, the Utsis and the I forgot the name of the other group, and they were basically fighting for a long time, and then it got to a point in I believe 1994 where it was a genocide. Millions of people died, and one of the guys that was the general of the army, he became president, and he had a goal by I think 2030 for the country to really thrive. And now it is one of the most developed countries in Africa as far as technology, GDP, and everything else. And I think the number one thing that he did, I think I saw the somebody commented earlier, he not only helped free the nation, he helped free the people's minds. And I think one of the most important things about us as Haitian is just that although we've been free for 200 some years, our minds, it's still. I think the most important thing is education, and I think that is lacking in our community, the Haitian community. So I think it starts with education, and it starts with a strong leader that is willing to. In order to govern a country like Haiti, you have to be really strong because you have to stand against some very powerful countries and people. So you really have to be a strong leader, and you have to have a plan. And I think one of the most important things to change Haiti, the Constitution has to change, because if somebody is president now, you can only be president for one. You could be president for 2 terms, but it has to be broken up. So you have to be president for 5 years, and then somebody else has to come, and then you could be president again. And I know that the Western powers have they have their hands on that because that constitution was changed in 1986. So I think in order for a president to come to really have change, you really need at least 2 terms, because I think 5 years is not enough time to change people's mindsets. So yeah.
Yeah, that's really insightful. Thank you for that. I love that we're already seeing comments going in the chat. Definitely keep that up, everybody, so you can make this a dynamic conversation. And while none of us are obviously sitting in the halls of government, we did have one interesting comment from someone on Facebook Live that I would love to get anyone's thoughts on if they had an opinion one way or the other. So Diana in our Facebook community said, America needs to allow dual citizenship for Haitian Americans, which would help solve some of the political issues, in Haiti. Any thoughts on that from anyone on the panel?
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be a great option for the diaspora to have that to go back and to get involved in the politics of Haiti. I also think that while we wait, or if it ever happens, there are still things that we can do without needing dual citizenship, right? And I also think that it's what might be the first step, and what might be even more important is that we encourage and ignite Haitians to get involved in Haitian politics. It's kind of like a double-edged sword, where we don't want to, as first generation or the Haitian diaspora, to go into Haiti and say, oh, here I am with all of my knowledge and all of my goodness, now let me take over your politics, right? I'm on the outside looking in. So although I know the country, I know the culture, and I know, our family and those things, I don't really have a good understanding of what's happening on the day-to-day. So I think encouraging and motivating Haitians themselves to be more involved in their politics, and to take more actionable steps in Haiti's politics would be a good place to start, while we wait for some of the benefits that could come from dual citizenship.
Absolutely, thank you. So I wanted to pose this next question. So we saw that video kind of going over some of the historic contributions to what's happening in Haiti, but are there other contributing factors that are leading to the situation in Haiti being what it is today? So I'll pose that to Chef Solomon first.
Yeah, so besides the outside forces, there are a lot of, there's just like pretty much a lot of countries, there is one class that is basically ruling the entirety of the country. They control the money, they control, besides the outside forces, they control the election, they control who wins, they control the country's gas, they control the country's um, energy. So pretty much they control everything. So um, a lot of those groups, if let's say somebody gets into power, and that specific person, if they helps a specific people get to power, and that specific person is not abiding by their agenda or by helping their cause, by helping them make more money, they create instability in the country. They pay people. I'll never forget this. I remember somebody that's very close to me went to Haiti one time, and while they were in Haiti, they saw a protest, and it was a whole bunch of people. And the person that started the protest went on the side and got on his phone, and he was like, "Hey, I got everybody here. We're gonna start." And the person on the other line was like, "I don't have the money." And the person that started the protest basically ended it. So it's just to show, there are a lot of people that are in need. They can't eat, they can't do a lot of things. So if you give them a couple of dollars, they're willing to do anything. So some of these people, their pockets run deep, so they can create protests, they can create all types of stuff, and that creates instability, and you just have a cycle that keeps on going. So that's one of the contributing factors. There's many more, but that is one of the major one, besides the forces coming from outside of the country.
Thank you for that. I'll open the mic to either Dr. Ann or Claudette if you had thoughts.
I was going to say, kind of piggyback off of what Sebastian said. Well, for me, I think, there's a lot of corruption, and as well as you have a country that's angry, right? Yeah, there are other factors that causes the instability, but we have a people who's enraged. So we're going to burn down supermarkets. We're going to get the attention that we need. It's a cry for help. It may not be, and 9 out of 10, it's not the right way, but it's like, I'm desperate. What else can I do? So at times we cause the instability as well, because it's as if most of the people do not have a voice. So you can't, if you're not willing to listen to me, I'm going to get your attention one way or the other. So at times it's us, our people. And I hope that don't come off the wrong way, but you get what I'm saying.
I just want to, I don't want to cut. I'm gonna go after you, Doctor. So I just want to.
Oh no, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say that there's a great a poet by the name of Tupac Shakur. He once said, if somebody's outside of a hotel and every day they just knock on their door, they're saying, "We want some food. We want some food," and everybody's ignoring it, and they go by a second day, a third day, a fourth day, and then that turns into years. By the time you get to a certain generation, they won't be knocking no more. They would be like, "I'm coming through the door. I'm picking the locks." So it's exactly what Claudel is saying. It's just, yes, we have a lot of corruption. We have a lot of outside forces. We have a lot of people with a lot of money that is controlling a lot of the policies and stuff going on in the country. But when you have generations that have been enraged, now they're not knocking no more. They're not asking no more. Now they're just breaking on the door and taking what they need. So that's what I wanted to add.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. So my next question, I actually want to jump to a question I had a little bit later in the conversation, because we kind of talked about it a little bit with Dr. Ann and Claudette. So I know a lot of the work that you do within the Haitian community is around mental health. And we've talked about just like how instability affects the psyche. So what do you think is really the intersectionality between what's happening in Haiti, what's happening with migrants at the border, and our mental health?
I mean, I think the two are, you can't separate the two. You know, the decision to get up and leave your home country, not because you necessarily want to, but because you're somewhat forced out, because you can't feed your children, you can't educate your children, you can't house your children or yourself. Making that decision in of itself can be a very traumatic decision to make. And so you're already starting, kind of like what Chef said earlier, is that you're already starting in the negative, right? You're already starting from the mindset of, you know, okay, well, I'm going to go on this journey into the unknown. I have no idea what's ahead of me. I don't know how I'm going to provide for me and mine. You know, there's also a sense of courage and determination and resilience that we have, which is great. But sometimes I feel like that resilience gets exploited, and it prevents us from seeing all of the hurt and the trauma that's under that. So you can't, making the decision to leave your home country, or being forced out of your home country because of various circumstances, you're not safe in various ways, is extremely traumatic in and of itself, right? And then we tack on the journey, we tack on not being able to, not reaching the destination the way you thought you would, or not, coming across different obstacles that you didn't realize you would encounter, losing people along the way, in these traumatic circumstances. It causes so much, you're just in survival mode, right? And then everything changes. Your physiology changes, your body changes, your response to different things change, and it perpetuates. Even when you are put in a place of safety, you don't really feel safe, and kind of going back to the politics, it's the same thing that we see play out when it's like, all right, well, we'll equip these people to be in these positions, but they still have the trauma of, when I had something, it was taken away from me. So now that I'm in this position, I'm looking at the perspective of, this might be taken away from me at any moment. So I'm going to survive, and I'm going to do what I need to do, even though it may not be best. I'm going to do what I need to do to protect myself. And that's what happens often in Haitian politics, is that people, the politicians, leaders, are looking out for themselves because they're so used to not having. And that you see that on a day, on the day-to-day in the lives of these migrants who are traveling into the unknown.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Claudette, did you have any other thoughts?
Yeah, I was gonna say that it hurts because many of our people are always on survival mode. We come from a place where we didn't have much, and I can't even imagine the thought of, I already didn't have anything, and now I'm stripped of everything. There was this picture going around of a toddler and an infant that was abandoned, and I'm trying to think, what was going through that parent's mind to get to that point mentally to say, you know what, I can't give anymore. I have nothing I could give this child. It's not that many might look at it as like, oh, how could that parent do that? But they're going through their own trauma. They probably had a mental breakdown, and they figured, I can't provide. So maybe someone else will find my children, and maybe someone else could care for them. So I'm thinking about the trauma that our people are going through, and that may not even be dealt with at all. And what about the children? Right for them, it's, okay, I don't have a home anymore. I'm just following mommy and daddy wherever we're supposed to go. And how they were treated to is another experience that they probably still didn't process yet. So I think that it's going to take a while to kind of break through and get through that trauma.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can't even imagine what that level of trauma has to feel like, to move from your home country to a foreign land, and even there not feeling safe.
Yeah.
Particularly in some of the research that I've read, or not research, but the articles that I've read on the topic, it told the story about how many migrants from Haiti will go to other South American countries, particularly countries like Brazil and Chile. And even in recent years, especially with the everything being heightened with the pandemic, that in both Haiti and, both Brazil and Chile, you're now experiencing a lot of anti-immigrant, anti-Black themes popping up in policy and really just the rhetoric that's happening in those countries, which is one of the contributing factors leading to a lot of those Haitian migrants in those two countries moving northward towards the U.S. border. So I wanted to give the floor again to Dr. Ann and Claudette on just like how that already trauma of leaving your country can compound with anti-immigrant or anti-Black messages being brought on people.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you're not welcome anywhere, you know. And I think with the anti-Black idea, it's interesting because in Haiti, everyone is Black, so they're, you know, the system is different. It's more classist, you know, more of like a status thing. But then when you go into another country and you are seeing people who aren't Black or who are, you know, various other ethnicities, you quickly realize, okay, well, I'm again back on the bottom. And so, yeah, it compounds, and you're still processing that you had to leave, and now you reach what you thought would be your final destination, where you thought you would be safe, where you thought you could start over, and realize, oh wow, now for this totally different reason, being racism or whatever it is, I can't stay here either. I'm also in danger here. So where do I go next, right? So it's tough. It's tough because it seems like there's no, like, where's the resolution? Like, you know, where's the end point? Where can they go and be like, okay, I'm good here, you know? And that's scary. Just not knowing where you're going to be or what's it going to be like. It's very scary, and it's extremely traumatic. And like Claudel was saying, these aren't things that they're necessarily going to be able to process right now, because right now it's kind of, you're just in, you know, flight mode. Like, I need to get to where I need to get. I'll deal with that later. So when the dust starts to settle and people are wherever they end up, then we'll start to see a rise. Like, oh my gosh, what did I just go through? You know, what is this that I'm experiencing emotionally, physically? What is going on? And so it's going to be an issue that'll perpetuate, and it will continue to develop and become more, you know, complicated if it's not addressed immediately.
I just it's kind of like, you know, when you're in high school, you start freshman year, it's just like, what table do I sit in? Like, where do I fit in? You know, it's new to you. It's scary. You have anxiety. But in this case, can you imagine you came from a place where maybe you were doing good where you were, and I have to start all over, but I don't fit in. I don't know if I'm going to get a job. How am I going to feed my kids? It's a constant war in the mind, you know? So it's something like Ann said, and what I mentioned before is just, it's not going to be dealt with no time soon, maybe later on down the line. But I can't even imagine on, you know, if I were a mother and I'm looking at my child, don't know where we're going from here. You know, no one wants us here. I'm not welcome. Opportunities aren't even open for me here. So how will I survive? So that's just my 2 cents.
Thank you. And then of course, I want to open it up to Chef Solomon to see if you had thoughts on this this question.
As both of the ladies were speaking, one of the things that crossed my mind is that you know, Haiti is the only country in the world that helped all these countries get in their independence, and we're not welcome in those countries. You know, the United States, you know, looking the battle of independence, we helped them in to gain their independence. If you look at countries, most of the countries in South America, we helped them gain their independence. It's, you know, like the ladies were saying, it's like literally no matter where you go, no matter where you are, we go next door to the Dominican Republic. We're a target. We go. It doesn't matter where you go, even if, because most of the Haitians go to those countries in South America, because those countries, Brazil and Chile, I believe, are the two countries where, as a Haitian, you don't need a visa. You could just go. So they go to those countries because it's free to go. And once you go there, you know, being in Haiti, sadly, it's insecure. You know, there's a chance that you might die. So people literally take the risk of going somewhere that's traumatic in itself to leave your country. Then you go somewhere where you don't speak the language, when you have no family, no friends. So it's just that's just trauma on top of trauma. And now you come to Chile or Brazil, you're not welcome. You're like, okay, I'm gonna make the journey from Chile to America, and from there you see people get raped because there's gangs in the jungle and the Amazon. There's gangs. All types of people. There are some people there. There are even reports that some people are eaten by wild animals, and there are people who are watching this stuff. So it's just like those people, instead of coming in here being under a bridge, they should have immediately allowed those people to sit with a therapist. And most of these people had survived the earthquake, so that's already another traumatic experience. So it's just like, and then you have these people sitting under a bridge and people taking pictures of them, and it just keeps on going. It's like our trauma just never ends.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, just the experience that you must face, just even in just like having your pictures taken and things like that, like all of that compounds in that extra weight, extra emotional baggage that you have to carry. That's a really, really interesting point. Just a quick note to our audience. Thank you for tuning in. We want to continue to hear from you. So if you have specific questions from our panelists, please put them in the comments either on YouTube or Facebook, and we will definitely make sure to speak to those questions. So I want to transition to really what you're hearing from members within the Haitian community, be that those in America or directly from the island. What are you hearing as far as what they want to see for themselves and for their community? I'll start with Claudel.
I feel as though with the people I've been in discussion with, the older generation, like our parents and so forth, when I hear them talking about the politics of Haiti and what they need, it's always leadership, right? Okay, who can step in? What can we do? But it's just a matter of, at times it's hard to trust too, right? Those people who may have been in position, it's just like they didn't really do what the people expected that they would do. Right now it's just the help of everyone else that we need right now. But it's just a matter of people coming collectively to kind of assist our people. And I use the word collectively. I stress that because it's hard for us to all come together. It may not be just us. It's just outsiders. And at times we're very prideful. We're just like, no, we got this far. We're going to get ourselves out of this. But no, we need everyone's assistance at this point. I'll brainstorm some more, but yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Ann.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are trying to figure out what they can do to help. I've heard like, I'll take families in and, I want to go down there and feed them. And I think collectively is really the word, right? We have to figure out how can we come together as groups to really do what makes the most sense. I remember I was listening to, when all of this was at its peak at the board, I was listening to Gerline from Haitian Bridge Alliance. She was speaking on Instagram. And she was saying that, people are coming down here to Texas and they want to, they're bringing water, they're bringing food, they're bringing all these materials and clothes. And she's like, we don't need that. We have water, we have food, we have clothes. What we need is for them to have a landing place when they get to their final destination, those who are allowed into the country. And one thing that she stressed, that she mentioned, was for communities to put together like groups of, 6 or 7 people who can assist with different things. So, like the 4 of us would be a group, and I would take on, housing, and someone else would take on employment, someone else would take on social services. So that way they have a support system in place so that when they arrive to this particular state or this particular area, they know that these people are going to receive me and to help me get started. I know I'm in Jersey, and I know of a couple families who have some way somehow I've been like placed in contact with them, and and they're like, oh no, we're with a family member, so we have food and we have clothes and we have housing for now, but I need a lawyer, right? I need a lawyer for free because I have no money to pay for a lawyer. So now it's like, are there any lawyers in the community who are willing to provide pro bono services? Because those who were allowed into the country, they have to report back in, and there's certain steps that need to be taken. I need a therapist, right? So are there any therapists who are able to provide pro bono? It's more of the social services that it sounds like the people are in need of. And so, what I try to do when I hear these conversations is, unless a family directly asks you for food, they probably don't necessarily need it. Is it nice to feed family? Absolutely, right? But let's think about what else may they need to really get them settled and to get them started when they arrive.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Even I myself, that definitely pushed my thinking into thinking how we support those in need. It's not just about the material things, but it's really a collective and holistic approach to what anybody will need when they're trying to get their feet under them in a brand new country.
Yeah, and trust me, when I first heard about it, I was on my phone, like, talking to my husband, like, babe, can we fly down there like now? Because I just want to like give a hug. I want to feed somebody. And, it's like, that's not what they really need, right? That stuff is taken care of on a more holistic, like you said, front. What else can we provide?
And then how about you, Chef Sebastian? Have you heard anything from within the community?
I think one of the most important things is just the right to seek asylum, just like you allowed the Afghans, nothing against them, but every country has laws. They have to abide by their laws, which is understandable, but the right to seek asylum, it's also a law in the immigration code that if somebody comes here and they have to seek asylum, you have to give them the right. I felt like our people were not given their right, especially not even a month removed from a deadly earthquake. So our people are dealing with a lot of just, even for me, just not having, just watching stuff online, and it's just, I'm overwhelmed. I'm just depressed. I'm just because you have, it's been a really hard year. 2021 started, a lot of insecurity in the country. Some of us have our family members kidnapped in Haiti, family members or friends or somebody that and then whether you agree with the president or not, the president gets assassinated. That's really, traumatic, overwhelming, and not even a month after the president died, you have an earthquake, and it's just like, I don't think it's right to just send those people back. I understand, like I said, I understand there are laws, there are things that need to be followed, but I believe those people deserve the right to seek asylum and given protected status, because if they are here, at least they could get a job. There's security. They don't have to worry about going outside and something terrible happening to them. So I think that's the most important thing, is just the right to seek asylum. I think that is one of the most important things that we have to hold the political leaders accountable, because what we're seeing at the border, over 1,500 people deported. They were not given the right to seek asylum. I think that is tragic in itself. So I think that is the most important thing. And then, like was said earlier, we just need leadership, and I think that's about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for those comments, and particularly Chef Salman, thank you for pushing us towards my next talking point, which is really about what we can do to really take action. So you mentioned the right to seek asylum, and that's something where we as Americans, we can put pressure on our local leaders to push for that legislation so that these folks are able to seek their right to asylum. So no matter where you are watching from today, these are the two numbers for the switchboards for both the U.S. Representative House of Congress as well as the U.S. Senate. So you can call these switchboards. You'll get put through to an operator. Let them know your name and which rep you are calling for, and they'll then transfer you to their office. And once you get online with the office, you can speak directly to your local leader's office and ask them that we do protect the right for asylum seekers coming from the Haitian community, that we do stop undue repatriation back to Haiti, which is basically taking these families, these refugees who have fled an unstable situation, and then sending them right back into that instability, which isn't doing right by them. So we can put pressure on our local leaders, and we definitely encourage you to do so. So if you're watching this right now, screenshot or jot down these numbers so that you can make the call to your local leaders. And then we would love to know what that experience was like for you, what type of feedback you got, if you were able to get through the switchboard again, so that we can continue to have that feedback loop. And if we find that the switchboards aren't working, or your reception at a different office wasn't handled well, we want to know that, so that way we can empower you to continue to make sure that your voice is heard. So we encourage you to call your local leaders, also email them as well. All you got to do is do a quick Google search to find out who your local rep is, who your senator is, and you'll see their website and a direct email to reach their office. We encourage you to, again, hit those lines, email your local leaders, let them know that you demand that they take action to provide the right to asylum and end those deportations from the U.S. Back to Haiti. But I wanted to then give the floor back to our panelists. What more do you think we can all do to support organizers on the ground? Dr. Ann, I know you mentioned again that holistic approach to what folks need. Do you or anybody else in the panel have recommendations on where we could look to give our support?
Again, from what I heard from Gerline, who runs the Haitian Bridge Alliance, her direction was, after you form these groups, to email them and say, hey, we have a group of 6 people in this area. And so when they know of someone who's going to that area, they can get back in touch and say, we have this family who's going to New Jersey in this particular town. Are you available to provide support? And then I think, Haitians are all over the states. So as Haitians, right, especially for me, I'm keeping my ear out, and I'm touching in and checking in with people who I know. Like, I have a few friends who work in the social services arena. And so I'm saying, hey, are you having any Haitians come into your organization? Have you heard of anybody? I think and it's hard because they sort of sent them out on their way without like any type of organized tracking of where they're going. And so I think we have to be a bit proactive about actually going out and seeking them out and seeing if and how we can provide services, right? I think we also have to be careful and not assume that everybody needs our help, because that may not be the case. They might come and they have, they're all set and good to go. So I think putting action behind our words, even in the very small steps that we can take, even if it's just one family or one person, I think that that's a great place to start, and staying as connected with one another as we can.
Absolutely. Before I turn to Chef Solomon and Claudel, I wanted to follow up on that, Dr. Ann. So let's say someone wanted to do what you're saying, to form that small group of support, but they're not a lawyer, they're not a trained medical professional. What type of role could they look to fill?
It could be anything from providing, rides to appointments. right? A lot of people are missing their appointment. They have an appointment with the lawyer, but they don't know how to get there. And so they miss it. Social support, right? Like, hey, come and spend some time with me. You have young children. I have young children. Let's take them to the park. I think in all of this, we have to remember, and, of course, tapping into the mental health side, that social connection and that social comfort, that social safety is very, very important as well. And so if it's just simply providing time, connection, a listening ear, helping them orient themselves to the town, right? Okay, well, this is where you'll be. Here is your local supermarket. This is where your child will go to school. Getting their children enrolled, and I'm not sure exactly what the logistics of that would look like for a migrant family, but I can help you go and translate for you and interpret. So there are many things that we can do without outside of the more, not being a lawyer or medical professional or something like that.
Right. I love that. I love that notion that like this radical change, this radical approach to care and help for someone doesn't have to be in these large, grandiose things. It can be as simple as just being a emotional and social support for somebody. I love that idea.
Yeah.
I want to turn it over to Chef Solomon on what you think folks can do to really to help out.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to agree with the doctor on this one. I think just starting, I think a lot of times what we do is we put in our minds like we have to make these great and big things. I think a lot of times it's just starting one at a time. Because helping one person, could change the world. So I think if we start one at a time, like she was saying, get connected with these groups, trying to see if you can take somebody, give somebody a ride, help translate something. It's you don't know how important it is, when somebody, especially, somebody comes from another country and they have papers, they have no idea what it's saying for you to just translate for them to tell them like, hey, this is what this paper is saying. This is the appointment. You don't want to miss this appointment. I can't take you, but I could direct you to somebody that can take you. So definitely those things, I think that's very crucial. And one of the things that I really wanted to say too is that as much as everybody wants to help, just be mindful if you're giving money and stuff like that. Just be mindful who you're giving money to, because a lot of people use these things to make a quick buck. So make sure whoever that you're dealing with is legit. You do your research. You get connected with people, see what they're doing, because even that earthquake that just passed, there's a lot of people who made money off of the backs of people that are down there. So definitely make sure that you're connected with people that are legit, because people are using causes like this to make a lot of money. So be very careful. That's why it's very important before you give your money to do things like that. Because if you're connected with somebody, if you're connected with one person and they have an appointment and you want to give, I don't know, $500, and maybe you could help that person, I don't know, pay for a lawyer or pay for documents or whatever. So instead of just giving out your cash and say, oh, it's all good, I helped out, just make sure you do your research before you give your money, or just find these groups and connect with somebody. And if you can't give them that money, I think that would be a better way to go about it, instead of giving money to these GoFundMe's or these, just, you don't know where your money's going. So just be very mindful of that.
Yeah, certainly. Always got to do your research before you do that. And I just appreciate this conversation so much, because we've talked about so many other things besides just sending some money, sending a check. So I really love that and appreciate you all for those insights. Of course, I want to give the floor to Claudel for any other thoughts.
They both collectively said what I wanted to say, and especially Sebastian said something that was key that I was going to mention is do your research before you send money, because there are a lot of people that will get you, and we're so eager to give, and it's just like, look up, see where the money is going and so forth. And even when I think I like the whole when Ann mentioned as far as like different groups that could do different things, like I think about Philly, there's so many people who have so many positions that we can use that to kind of like, yo, what can you do? What can you do? Come together. So many resources. There's a lot of successful Haitians in our community that we can actually start that here. Start in Jersey, DC. I think we definitely need to be more proactive with that. It's not a time to just sit back and wait. It's go time. Our people are in need. They're suffering. And we have the means to help them the best way that we can. So let's do that. So for those who are watching, if you do have the means, if you do have a certain group, whether it's your church group, whomever, you in school, get certain people together, reach out to an organization. That way they know that they have you in that area that they can utilize you as a resource to help those in need at this moment. So
yeah.
Absolutely. Super well said. Really, all of your insights, Dr. Ann, Chef Sebastian, and Claudel, has been super helpful for my own insights on how to frame this conversation, how to look to do more myself, and I'm sure our audience appreciates it as well. So as we really wrap up the conversation, I wanted to, of course, give you guys the floor if you had any final thoughts. But we are right at the hour mark, 7 p.m. I appreciate everyone for joining us. I appreciate Lakai Selakai. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. For joining us with this. Chef Sebastian, thank you so much for providing your insight and perspective on this. I'll just open the floor if anybody has any final thoughts.
I mean, thank you so much for putting together this platform and this conversation. I think it's extremely important, and hopefully, we keep having it in different, along the way. I think it's just your organization kind of just says it all, right? Just do more, just do something, do more, do whatever it is you're thinking to do, just do it, because talk is great and having moments to collaborate and discuss ideas is amazing, but we often fail at taking that step to actually do the things that we talk about. So I would just encourage everyone to do something, even a small little thing.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. So you will definitely see more from the Do More campaign. I hope to collaborate with you all again if there's any other way that I personally or the campaign can coordinate with your efforts. Always feel free to reach out. To those watching, Lakai Say Lakai does have an Instagram. They're on IG at Lakai_Say_Lakai_project. Chef Solomon, do you have any social media you want to plug?
Oh, yeah, I'm on Instagram at Cuisine King, KuisineKing. And thank you so much for the conversation. I just want to say, if you're listening, just do more, like Dr. Ann said.
All right. And Claudel, any last words?
I agree. Thank you for this opportunity. This was great. I really enjoyed this, and I think that it puts a fire in me as well to hit up some of my friends and say, "Yo, we got work to do," and just get together with those who I know and get the job done, get some work going at least. So, for those listening, you as well, be proactive. So.
Amen. That's it. We're going to be proactive. We're going to do more. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you to our great panelists for an amazing conversation. And let's look to do more in the future. Have a great night, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.
Yeah, bye-bye.